Hello, everyone, and welcome to another horrific review. Right, as I seem to be doing a lot of crow news lately about this already looks god awful remake that did no business making whatsoever, I thought it was right that I'll look at the original. So, tagline is a man brutally murdered comes back to life as an undead avenger of his and his fiancee's murder. This film was originally released in 1994. And if I get it right, it was only cost 23 million to make, and it made 94 million at the box office. So pretty decent movie. God, I saw it in the cinema back in the day. Oh, there's Sean. Yeah, they re-released it because I think they're trying to hype up the new movie by re-releasing the old, so everyone will realize what a better movie it's going to be before you even look at it. Yeah, I saw it myself in the cinema when it first came out. Brilliant. So essentially, it's an area of Detroit, and the thing focuses around Devil's Night, which are the 3 days: Devil's Night, All Hallows Eve, and All Saints Day, are sort of the trilogy of Samhain. If that makes sense. So you've got the 3 nights in a row, and they all have significance. So I think no, it's not called Devil's Night. Officially, there's the night before All Hallows Eve. I think they used it for the. Sorry, I could be completely wrong there. I should have looked that up before I went on. Don't shout at me in the comments. I'm sorry. It does have another name. I know the next one's All Saints Day after Halloween, and it's basically coming from autumn into winter and all the transition. Essentially the end of life things, get into hibernation, all that kind of stuff. That's kind of the point. So yeah, it was a news report became known as Devil's Night. I need to look it up, but it means stopping the whole stream and going on Google and stuff. But yeah, this area of Detroit, it's been run down. It's that whole Manny's decline for gentrification. There's a bit of a hint at that. And it just goes straight into the crime scene of Eric and Shelley. Eric and Shelley. And we just see the police go through the process, and we see that Shelley's still alive, and the murder's taking place. So there's no build up, there's no exposition, there's no trying to explain everything. But during the intro, we sort of get a narration talking about how souls can be, done wrong when they're dead, and sometimes a crow can bring them back, and the crow seen as a guardian, leading to the other life. It's almost Native American folklore, but it's kind of brought in to the audience at the time, brought in sort of the modern zeitgeist. A really cool idea, I have to say. Just simple premise. It's a revenant, it's the story of a revenant, and when a wrong's done, how it can just leave an echo even in the afterlife, that the spirit just cannot rest because of an injustice. So it turns out that they live in this attic apartment, and they were protesting their landlord, essentially trying to evict them, and they put a complaint to somewhere. So essentially a gang of bully boys was sent to basically send a message, and sow fear. We also get, this all occurs in the first 10 to 15 minutes of the film. So what we get is the entire world building. We get Eric and Shelley's relationship. We get introduced to Sarah, who's a young kid whose mother's an addict, and they know each other through the bar because that's where Eric performs. So in 10 minutes of this movie, without stopping and starting, and the flow of the story moving constantly forward, we get the setup of the area. We know what's going on. It's being deliberately run down so that property developer, whatever, we don't get the full explanation. Now, that's one thing that falls apart of the movie. We don't get the full explanation what the end game is. But we get Eric and Shelley's relationship. We get how close they are. We see the murder. And also we see how the time jump happens from a year after the event. So rather than just being a meeting, it's kind of showing that things are going on. Spirit can't rest because so much time's gone past. No justice. This is all beautifully tied into the first 10 to 15 minutes of the movie. So you're brought into the world and you're invested. And if you heard me explaining during the news article, I was talking about the sort of the Crow remake, they're going to spend half an hour to 40 minutes of the movie exploring Eric and Shelley's relationship. What a snore fest that's going to be. This movie does it in 10 minutes. We know that they love each other. We know we're deeply connected. They know that they live in this area that's been deliberately run down. We know what both of them do for a living. We know their relationship with the wee girl, Sarah. We know that they were murdered. We know who murdered them. We know the legend that's going to bring him back. All the first 10 minutes of the movie, this is covered. And you don't feel as if you're being rushed or, you're just having things explained. There's no exposition. You're not being explained to you. Apart from the narration, explain the legend, which fits over everything as it's moving forward. This is a beautifully told story. Yeah, as I said before, I like Bill Skarsgård as an actor, but he just looks like some hood rat gangster type. There's a reason why this is a cult classic, and for some of the music, they're using a lot of like the Cure goth music. I was never particularly into the scene, but I do have an appreciation for it. We'll get this universe, and we also get the world within a world, which is fantastic. The aesthetics of this. There's also, even for the day, there's a few wobbles here and there with some of the effects, but generally it's really well done. They don't have Eric Draven doing the flippy spinny, that horrible, which would come in the 2000s, as I say, about like Blade 2 and all them sort of movies, of the up against the wall doing the CGI flippy spinny thing, like defying gravity. We don't have any of that crap. So even the effects look great. They use camera trickery, they use props, they use Brandon Lee's physicality. Because if you've seen Brandon Lee was a martial artist, he's taught by his dad, obviously. But he's been in a few action movies, so he holds up in his own right. I would say he's actually less cheesy than Bruce Lee was. Bruce Lee, was sort of the hamminess of the 70s, where at least Brandon's movies, God, I can't remember the name of them. It's been so many years since I've watched action flicks. But he's decent, he's a decent star in his own right. And this movie, which is a shame, it was his last movie he made, because obviously the tragedy behind it. But if he had carried on, he established himself as his own right, not just living in his father's shadow. Oh, God. So this all adds up. So we know they were murdered. We know who they've been murdered by. We know why they've been murdered. We get all the build-up. Even Top Dollar was a borderline cheesy character. But with him and Micah and the sort of pseudo-incestuous relationship they have, and just they're involved in that world, they live above their nightclub, it's that sort of cliche, but they still have a sinister vibe to them. And they're deliberately showing that they're just ready to go off the rails themselves, but they have enough self-control to control their empire and keep it together. There's a whole sinister vibe here. And this is like, you're hitting like 15, 20 minutes in a minute. You're in the world. You're invested in this movie. And the rest of it, you're just watching it play out. Another thing that did very well, obviously this is all kicked off when Shelley goes to visit their grave a year later. And then the spectral crow appears and wakes Eric up by tapping on the grave, on his headstone. We don't have him bursting from the grave and flippy spinny, superhero. You actually have him trying to adjust to his new situation, that he's not dead anymore. You have the confusion. You have him like falling about the place, barely in control of his limbs. You have all that happening, and it's all explained. And once again, what's so great about this movie and why it holds up, we're having seamless storytelling. We're not having the story jump and start and stop, and the audience having to have things explained to them. It's all done. It shows, it doesn't tell. We see the struggle of Eric coming into his new life. He's not too far away from his own character because he's a rock star. He plays in clubs, so he kind of is borderline on that. The aesthetics he takes on isn't that too far away from his own character, but it's enough to transform him. So even the Crow pointing to where he can pick up clothes, and I'm going back to his apartment, which was interesting because this is a year later. The sort of apartment complex is closed down, it's condemned. So the plan hasn't been enacted yet. So that's what I'm saying, a bit of wobble in the plot. What was the point of having them evicted? As it's still not happening yet. Like, we see how dirty, grimy, how run down the whole neighborhood is. Is the process still going ahead? Is that what we're waiting? So basically, he's coming in at just the right time, not just to avenge his own, but like the universe has decided that Eric needs to act now as the Crow to put a spanner in the works before this great evil takes place. There's subtext and questions in the story, but once again, it's not navel gazing. The reason you're asking the questions is because you're just looking around and you're given a moment, because this is an action movie, but it's not one of those high octane action movies where you're just like action scene, action scene, action scene, action scene, boom, boom, boom. That you don't have a minute to think, and it tries to distract you from the lack of plot with the pretty lights. What we're actually looking at the world because you've been given time and you've been shown how this world operates. So therefore you can be invested and you can ask questions and you can wonder, using the quiet moments through this, and even between the action scenes, like, they're well done. You see him in this first fight with oh god, knife T-Bird. No, it's not T-Bird. It's Tintin. Sorry. You kind of see him. He's not fully in control. He's learning how to use the abilities, so he hasn't just appeared and fully aware. And he's getting, wrapping his head around why him, and he's not giving over exposition. Even when people like talk to him, and that, he's still like going, I don't know. I'm just here. It's the way it is. He's not all of a sudden some wise sage and out of his character. He's just basically a normal bloke. He's still Eric, but he's taken on the persona of the Crow. And you almost see that when he puts on the makeup. It's not so much him. There's almost another entity goading him. And you almost see that battle, if that makes sense. There's this thing goading him along. His actions aren't entirely his own. And you see a bit of that as well. And you see the emotional struggle of Eric, learning to accept what he is. And it's shown, once again, we're not told any of this. We can just go along and see this through watching the movie. How long has it been since we've seen a movie like that? Like, it's the 90s. They're still able to make original properties, still able to storytell, still able to use, like flipping Ernie Hudson's in this. He's a Sergeant Albrecht. He's a main character. Like, he is your grounding character. He's your point of view character of explaining this world. And because he showed a bit of compassion, because he went, it's not strictly in his beat, but he went and he spent all night with Shelley until she passed. He started asking too many questions, so he got demoted from detective So we see how corrupt and dirty, and how people have been bought off, and how this is all part of a bigger plan, which is essentially, a property deal. That's what this is. The amount of misery and uh, violence and death being caused just so somebody could buy property, you can relate to it because it happens. It's a shame that it was like I said, he has been in other movies. He's been in action movies, but this would have, if he had been able to carry on his career, this movie defined him, and he'd have been unstoppable. This was the movie that took him from under his father's shadow. And those of us at a certain age who remember Bruce Lee and remember Brandon Lee coming of age and starring in his first movie, there was always that comparison. And it was always going to be the case. This was the movie that made him his own entity, and it was just such a bloody shame what happened. Which is another reason why this remake and why there's so much pushback against it before it's even bloody come out. Like, only the trailer shown, but even so, just the idea of it is offensive. Without getting all preachy on this, there's a reason why it's considered offensive, even though there was a shitty sequel made to this. There was there was 3 shitty sequels. There was City of Angels. There was one in 2000 or something. There's like 3 shitty sequels. There's a god awful TV show, and people just didn't bother. They just didn't bother looking into it because I think there was that bit of respect shown to the original. They were trying to carry on the story, but I think the fact that it's a remake coming out, that they're basically pissing on the grave of Brandon Lee, is what people see it, is why there's so much backlash and why I don't see it doing well at the box office. So we get introduced as well. We get introduced to Top Dollar and Micah. They're step half siblings apparently, which also might be true and might not be true, because Top Dollar understands theatrics, and he understands the use of almost mysticism. Mike is into the occult. We'll see that they've basically shared a prostitute and have killed her. Well, is she a prostitute or that's a sort of opening scene. We'll see the things they're doing, and their subordinates understand that these two are just, they always have to tread carefully around them because they don't know when they're going off the edge. That inspires fear, and in that sort of world of the underground, you need to do that. It's the only way you keep people in line. So they've actually understood theatrics, and you kind of see that, yeah, we're going to party. They're just that one step from falling completely off the edge, but their empire is more important to them. Yeah, but also said incestuous. It's a pseudo incestuous. They're sort of hinting at it, without going fully Game of Thrones, if that makes sense. That was it. This is where movies, you don't have to have it spelled out. This is where using underplay and undertones. Well, now everything is just, you're beaten over the head because people don't know how to write stories. And this is why a lot of us, who grew up in the 80s and 90s, who went to the cinema every bloody week. I was religious. That's Karen. Like, sometimes I go twice a week. There'd be a Wednesday screening, Saturday screening, but we went to the cinema. It was just a thing. New movies, you saw them, you experienced them. Now people are lucky if they go 2-3 times a year. But this was all underplay. It didn't have to be spelled out. It was there. The actors showed you what was happening. There was a wee bit of dialogue, of what, that's your sister, and Top Dollar's like, what, do you not see the family resemblance? That's all you needed. Where today that would be a 10-minute dad tribe of blah 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 blah. that's why we're so angry. We miss movies like this. The director just set a scene and he's telling a story, and he needed to show the sort of deviancy, why someone's prepared to inflict this much misery just for a property deal, because it's power as well. It's the seductiveness of power. And when someone has that and they're addicted to it, it's like any other form of addiction. They can't control themselves. They can't stop. And we're seeing that. And we're seeing how ready this house of cards is just one push away from falling. And that's what Eric Draven's character, the crow, the revenant that comes back, he's shown that, because up until now, they haven't had any form of resistance. And we'll see how easy the little push when Eric starts going through, and he's only interested in the people that killed him and Shelley. He wasn't thinking of larger plan, larger scheme. That he wasn't thinking politically or doing the good for the, you know what I mean? He was just, or for the area or anything. He didn't have that much emotional connection. He had a connection to Shelley and he had a connection to Sarah, and that's all that mattered. One thing that really did very cleverly was to show that Albrecht's character, the fact that he was a victim of this. He was demoted to police sergeant, and he's basically, the corrupt elements of his precinct are against him, and he's the one that comes in contact with Eric. And instead of arresting him, and instead of going, oh, it's not a case of, oh, he's spirit, nobody sees him, he disappears. It's not like Spawn or anything. He encounters him and speaks to him like a human, so you don't have him going, he speaks to Eric as a person. And this gives Eric the opportunity to explain that he doesn't know what the hell's happened to him. He's like, I don't know, it's here. I have this urge, this desire. It's my one thing to take revenge. Albrecht, seeing the corruption and having been a victim of it himself, and seeing the managed decline of the neighborhood and the misery, feels no reason to stand in the way. But also, he doesn't compromise himself either. So he's still able to maintain his integrity as a police officer, because he's not actively carrying out the crimes. But at the same time, knowing how corrupt his department is, him looking the other way is justified in this occasion, as long as Eric doesn't cross the line. Sarah as well. Her character, she's only a kid, and she's basically a kid, but she's operating in an adult world. Her mother, Darla, is a waitress at the club, and she basically hooks up with anybody because she's a heroin addict. So she hooks up with all the gangsters for a fix. She's a broken person. Probably Sarah doesn't know who her father is, no family relationship, no, she just exists. And she's effectively a feral kid. Yet, because of her friendship with Eric and Shelley, that's the thing that stopped her going down the bad path, if that makes sense. It was holding on to that friendship that sort of pulled her away from go down the same route as her mother. And you see that, and the fact that she still left flowers in the grave shows the impact that the friendship had. And once again, this is not exposition. You're not getting a dump of, here's 20 minutes of dialogue to explain their relationship. Just a simple act that a year later, she's still putting flowers in the grave. And we know this is a regular thing. And the fact that when she feels like she's in trouble, she'll go and spend, even at nighttime, go to the grave. So we'll see, just from the storyline, that's you've got this connection. It's a connection that keeps Eric grounded, and the fact that he reconnects with her instead of just staying in the shadows. In fact, she goes looking for him the minute you recognize him, because he was it Rain Never Stops, one of his song lyrics. that's all done. Like I said, and this movie does not slow down. It doesn't stop and start. It doesn't pause to give you exposition. It's done through the storytelling. So you're going along with the story. You're getting the information. You're building the world. And then when he's taking revenge on the scumbags, you see that they deserve it. And you also see that some are bottom gutter rats and some are the more vicious. The gutter rat will just do it. T-Bird's slightly higher, but Skank is like lowest of the low. He's absolutely lost without leadership. You know, if somebody's not there telling him what to do, he doesn't know how to operate. And you see him, he's the one left at the last, and he's completely fallen apart. You would almost pity him if you didn't know that the minute he gets the upper hand, he's a sadistic bastard. And once again, that's not exposition dump, they're explained. You know it because you've seen it through the flashbacks, you've seen it through his actions. And you see how cowardly these people are, because at the end of the day, when they have the opportunity, they will inflict the most horrific of things on people. But the minute they get a pushback, that's it, they fall to pieces. And we'll see Top Dollar's whole organization essentially, because they're getting pushback, just ready to fall to pieces. And the overreaction of getting all the guns in, getting all the hired help, you know, really ramping up the muscle, the fact that everything goes after 2 or 3 killings, which in this sort of neighborhood is like a daily occurrence. But it shows that, you know, best thing to do with bullies is actually stand up to them. Because if enough people do it, then they stop, because that's what they rely on, is your cowardice and your fear of whatever will happen. You know, bullies have always relied on that. The minute you stand up, it's amazing what can happen. You actually surprise yourself. And that's, you know, there's another bit of messaging in this movie. So there's social economic messaging in this movie. There's crime, there's how things happen, there's, you know, a hint at what the overland plan is. Because, you know, Top Dollar isn't doing he's setting things up for the handover. Obviously, when the movie or the area gets gentrified, he'll move on and do the same again. But you don't need him to have the meeting with the property tycoon to see it. If that makes sense. It's there, it's told what people like this are prepared to do, that have no scruples. But we're not sitting getting lectured about it. Do you know what I mean? Which movies cannot do today. Movies cannot tell a story. They can't have an underpinning of a bit of a social commentary about how things work and what people without scruples are prepared to do. They can't tell those stories today. They beat you over the head with it. They have to exposition and explain, which I think this remake's going to do. It'll be very interesting to see what the storyline's going to be, because if they're remaking, it's pretty much going to be the same storyline. And I can almost bet you there'll be a property tycoon and there'll be exposition dumped of how this has all happened. Yet we'll watch this movie and it still bloody holds up, because it didn't rely too heavily on digital effects or anything, so they haven't aged that well. There's, like I said, there's a few bits and pieces, and the fact that they didn't have deepfake technology and a stunt double replayed the scenes. Check out my news article. You know, basically he had to sit and watch the stills of the movie to get the scene so he could carry on. That's the sort of dedication, and if people do things out of the love of the art, like I said, this movie was only made in 23 million, and it looks 100 times better than freaking movies out today at hundreds of millions. Like, does that not say everything you need to know about this movie? And the fact that the milked, like, really shitty sequels, they were just like discount, bargain basement discount stuff at the end of it, and they knew that's why they stopped. Oh, yeah, Dale, it is. We just know already. Even the look, even the trailer, the look of it, we know it's going to be terrible. There's no redeem. I would even say The Crow City of Angels is going to be a better movie than the remake. I would argue that. even without seeing it, I can almost put my hand in my heart right now and go, The Crow City of Angels, which was terrible, is going to be a better movie than this one coming out. And for all the reasons I've explained during this review, they don't have the art of story. Why are they doing so many remakes, reboots, prequels, requels, all that sort of shit? Because they're creatively bankrupt. They don't have ideas. Their little nepotism bubble for the same people that keep propping up because their connections is going to burst. And I look forward to that day. Because I think people are understanding now why you need cinema, why you need good stories, why you need positivity, why you need distraction. You need to be able to switch off for no other reasons. Life is shit. And anybody tells you different has got rose-tinted glasses. They've never been challenged in their life. And one day their bubble going to burst, and it's going to burst hard. And we've seen so many of them people. They're the ones that end up in bell towers when things go wrong because they've never been challenged or told no in their life or had a disappointment. They just don't live life. Life is shit. Life is hard. But it's bloody worth it. Because friends, family, achievements, struggling against adversity, that's what makes life worthwhile. That's what makes us people. In this case, love. We see the strength of love and the injustice, sense of injustice that needs to be redressed. The fact that a person can come back from the dead, and the fact that the Crow, who's basically, the Grim Reaper, it's a form of the Grim Reaper, and the Grim Reaper's functions to take you from one world to the next, even the fact that they've been given the power, able to summon up the power to bring somebody back to allow this to happen, shows that if you create a ripple in the universe, there's consequences. If you throw a big boulder into a pond, you see it. It's all cause and effect and consequences of action. I mean, there's so much in this movie in terms of topics discussed, but it doesn't sit here and give you a bloody lecture. And it's a 90-minute movie. It's a standard length of movie. I can almost bet you this friggin' new one's going to be 2 hours long. Can almost guarantee it. Probably a bit longer. Because they don't know how to write tight scripts or dramas. Here we go. Hour and a half. And what do we not know? Flutter's Chris on as well. Hey, a lot of people coming on this one tonight. Great to see you. Obviously, I'm guessing you're here because you feel the same. I didn't just. It was the conspiracy theory always was because it was a festive fury that Bruce Lee died when he jumped and people were shooting and was what it is with blank rounds. You can sometimes get a bit of debris in the. When I was a cadet, when we were using blank rounds, it'd always show you. There's always stuff comes out the end. So flip the old 98 LA1, they would actually put a tin can on the end of it and blow the tin can to pieces. And what you were being taught was, do not point this at anybody's face. Do not, operate all the safety stuff, because even though there's not actual rounds in this will mess you up. I remember being shown that as a kid when I was a cadet. When I joined up, they showed the thing called the BFA, the blank firing attachment, because to fire the weapon in automatic, you can't, there's not enough blowback because it's actually the projectile in the barrel that holds the gas back, so it lets you push the working parts. So you have this thing just to tighten everything up so you could do it. Even with that, we put it up against paper and show it disintegrating. Once again, don't point this at people's faces. Don't do this. Don't do that. They're bloody dangerous. On film sets, they're showing, they're using, especially back then, because even technology wasn't hadn't progressed that far with even the digital stuff. There's no way they can do it. They had to actually use blank rounds. So it just takes a bit of dirt not being cleaned properly, dust. It could even just be a faulty round. It could be packed. The paper could be packed too tight. That's all it takes to bloody kill you. It's a dodgy thing. That's why there's so many rules. And it was actually Brandon Lee's death was just it started a whole series of rules for television production. If you see even people with bow and arrows, you don't point it at other people. It's always pointed off camera. There's a whole safety thing when somebody's got it and they're about to fire. This was an absolute tragedy, what happened. But it wasn't negligence. It was one of those things that, when they looked at it, it was just absolute. Nobody had a reason to do it. There was nothing. Brandon Lee wasn't a controversial character or anything. It wasn't anything like that. It was purely an accident. And I think it was, God, it's been to, I never thought I would go into this here. But it was just simple. Something got into the barrel of one of the weapons, and that's all it took. And it wasn't a round. It wasn't a live round or anything. It was just debris. God, it's fair to that. Have you seen people with like pressure washers and so on, like the really high? You can kill people with those. It's amazing how rigid, the human body could be, and also how fragile. People can fall out of airplanes and survive. Somebody could trip on a curb, and that's it. Lights out. Which is also a reason why you appreciate the bloody life you got. You don't. Which is this weird thing about the victim fetish at the moment, and people just being constantly depressed and moaning and crying. It's like, this is it. You don't know what tomorrow brings. Bloody embrace life as much as you can, because you really don't. This was a guy about to really step up to the next level. Top of his game. This film was about to define, which it did, define Brandon Lee as his own entity and not somebody under his father's shadow. This was the movie that was really going to take him into the stratosphere. Look at he could have made another 3 or 4 Crow movies easily himself, and they'd have all been box office gold. His whole life was in front of him, and there you go. And he was actually, because you have to be invested. Look at the story being told. He wasn't going around with an ego. His father had a massive freaking ego. It was one of the things I never liked about Bruce Lee. You look at the way he went around, just so cocky. His son didn't have that. His son actually had a bit of humility to him. I would say he was more rounded than his father. He was actually he was a better put together human being. His father was so up his own arse, it was unreal. It actually would put you off him. And people are actually now, because of the almost religious zealotry of his fan base, people are only brave enough to sort of tell the real story of Bruce Lee now. It was it's interesting, But yeah, there's somebody just nothing. The only direction we're going from here was up, and it just cut short. That was it. And I almost think that it wasn't even a fully, because that 23 million could have been written off. When you think of what gets written off now in terms of movies, that could have been written off. But the fact that they were prepared to put the work in to finish it and not make it look awful, it had pretty much 90% done. And it was only like a few scenes that the stunt double, jumped in for and really made an effort. It you don't do that. You don't go to that level of detail if you're, for a $23 million movie, you don't go to that level of detail unless you're invested in the project. And if you didn't have genuine love and admiration for the lead actor, I'm just putting that out there, because look at who today would hold that level of reverence if they passed. None, you just be forgotten about and replaced. Nobody cares because there's no reason to. This is definitely like the 90s were the end of the era, because we'll see, and you've seen movies I've covered like the 2000s onwards, we'll see the decline starting from the early 2000s of storytelling, and we'll see the fact that just everything was going wrong. It takes a long time to start to see it, and definitely in the 2010, that's where things, around about that era, things really started to fall off a cliff. But the late 90s, early to mid 90s was the end of the era. This is where storytelling mattered, showing, not telling, actually investing in the property. Like, this was just an off the cuff standalone movie. It could have not done well at all. Could have been forgotten about. But it was done that well. And you see this, when you just watch it on its own merit, even if you don't take into account the tragedy involved with the movie, just look at this objectively on its own merit. It's a bloody good movie. There's a reason why you can stick it in the DVD player again and again and again. There's a reason why it gets re-released, why there's 4K Blu-ray, comes out every anniversary. It's a well put together movie. What's getting made today that has that same impact? What is getting made that doesn't age? I mean, there's movies now age by the time you leave the cinema doors. They're already aged. 6 months later, the movie's aged. You're done. It's not rewatchable. You just don't get this level of storytelling. And I don't think they were even trying. They weren't trying to be groundbreaking with this. I think that's the thing that gets me. This was, an interesting story. It's a supernatural action movie. But it's not trying to be anything. It's just trying to tell a good story. And that was the standard. That's what was expected of you, to get stuff onto the big screen. Where is it now? The stupid amounts of money being spent on tentpole projects and just they're ghouls today in Hollywood. Like, all they're doing is going over the graves of old properties and digging them up and, effectively getting the rotten corpse and sticking it, on marionette strings and trying to, look, remember this? Remember? Yeah, that was the tagline, the line from one of his songs. We never even heard the song. That's the thing as well. If that's done today, I bet you as well. I can almost flip sake. I'm gonna have like a stack of notes to hand out to random YouTube people because I'm like making all these bets that could call in. I can almost bet that in the remake they're going to have the song, and he's going to sing it, and we're going to like have 5 minutes dedicated to this fucking song, where you knew there was a song. You knew it was a line from the lyrics. It was mentioned twice in the whole movie, but you still remembered it because it was important, because it's part of the storytelling. They can't tell stories like that today. They fucking can't, because they're shit. They don't have the talent. I watched this movie. God, this is 43 minutes. This is a long review by myself for a movie, but it's important, I think, to explain why we're so annoyed with today, and calling us all the S-foes and bigots isn't going to change anything, because at the end of the day, you're shit. Modern Hollywood and your sycophants and your news articles and everything else, you're just a pile of shit. You can't even hold a candle. This technically would have been a generic, could have been just a generic action movie lost in the absolute plethora of movies being made. It didn't do anything exceptional in terms of telling stories, because there's loads of movies, like there's shit movies as well nowadays, but there's loads of movies like this. This was the standard. It just happened that they brought the right elements together, and the storytelling that made this seamless. But that's what they always tried to do with movies. That was always the attempt. And yeah, I don't understand why they can't even think about doing this. It's ridiculous. And the action scenes in this are brilliant. And they're not overplayed. Like, we've got explosions. We've got when he goes into the what do you call it? The pawn shop. And basically he's looking for his engagement ring, that he gave Shelley before they were killed. But it all makes sense. He uses the rings, he puts it in the shotgun because he knows that'll create sparks, pouring petrol everywhere. And, you know, who knows, it wasn't overplayed. And the explosion is the explosion. It's not like a nuclear event, in half the neighborhood. It actually is contained. See the pawn shop dealer actually get out, but he doesn't just get away unscathed. He's burning and stuff. And the T-Bird, when he takes out T-Bird, the only bit of extravagance is when you see him with the lighter fluid, drawing out the crow. But we know he's got supernatural help, so it doesn't matter. It's you sort of buy in because you've been brought into the universe. So when he does things like that, and like realistically, anyone tries to do that, it's going to look absolutely crap. But this is a supernatural being, and it's about sending the message. There's a greater battle being waged here, and not just Eric's revenge. I can almost here's another bet. For example, I'm gonna be broke at the end of this. I bet you this, Eric. Bill Skarsgård's character is going to have some sort of struggle against his need for revenge and doing something worthwhile. And I bet you some random shitty character is going to explain to him why he has to put aside his revenge for a minute and carry on the fight. I can almost guarantee that's going to be in this new movie. So he's going to go on a rampage, killing spree, and somebody's going to explain to him why he needs to do this. Because once he kills his Shelley's killers, and he's done, ready to go back to his grave. Same as this one, Eric was done. He'd go back to his grave to wait. But Sarah ends up in trouble. We already know they have a deep connection. They see themselves as pseudo parents to her, like an auntie and uncle. We'll have that all shown to us throughout this movie. So of course he's going to go back and save her. He wasn't even remotely interested. He thought he was done because once again he's not all seeing, all knowing, and there's nobody giving him an exposition dump of the whole linked train up to the top. So he goes and does that, and then it just happens that Top Dollar admits, boasts that he's the one gave the order. So therefore, that's why he didn't just dissolve back into the grave, because he wasn't finished. He didn't know that, because he only could see what he knew. The scene with him in the apartment with Albrecht, trying to explain, I don't know what the hell's happened to me. All that. When he meets Shelley again and she goes looking for him. Ain would get all that. God. They can't make movies like this anymore. They should just leave it alone. Like, this isn't even nostalgia, because you know me, I'm a cynical bastard. I don't do nostalgia because it's been weaponized and used against us by utter hacks to make this utter crap that's coming out, and it's just been belt fed to us today. It's not even funny anymore. They're not even trying. There was a bit of a facade like early to mid 2000s as the creativity well ran dry, but now they don't even try anymore. They're just shit that out on the screen, like it, peasants, and if you don't, you're a bigot. Okay, how's that working out for them? Because everyone's twigged on what the game is, and they're not playing anymore. And I've been speaking out against this since this channel started, and people, even Cameron was looking at me like I was mad at the start, and now it's come to fruition, and we're seeing it happening. People have twigged on, and finally starting to reject this stuff. So there you go. Do you want me? I wasn't going to go and see it, but do you want me to do the new one? It's just going to be like an hour of me bitching. I'm going in expecting to hate it. I'm just going to go in angry. The movie. What do you say in the chat there? Just before I wrap this up, do you want me to go and watch this absolute abortion of a movie? You better bloody come and watch if I do, because I'm not going through this. Angry reviews. You bastards! You just like winding me up, don't you? Yeah, that's wine Colin up and set him off. That's a right. Okay. This does make me. You know, I mean, this is such a great movie, and it holds up. It's watchable, not just watchable, but it's enjoyable. You stick it in, you watch it again, and it's fantastic. And even though they've given a wee bit of a polish now and again, they don't need to because it just translates so well on the screen, and they didn't overreach themselves with effects, so nothing's really aged. So yeah, I wind myself up half the time. Yeah, you freaking love it, don't you? Yeah, fair one. I just think it was like they could have just by producing the 30th year anniversary. I think Shay unboxed it on his channel. I haven't watched it yet, but I think he got the 4K. Wasn't it re-released 30th anniversary 4K? And he did an unboxing on his channel. Yeah, you know what I mean. They could make money. They could just stick it back in the cinema again for the 30th anniversary. Why didn't they do that? Like what the hell is it with cinemas? Okay, so they've no creativity. They're not making any new stuff, and they're worried about the cinema doors closing. Fucking 10th, 15th, 20th, 25th, 30th, every 5 years, there's an anniversary of fantastic movies. Bloody re-release them at a discounted rate in the cinema, and you'll get bums and seats. Especially younger people who want the cinema experience. Because it is an experience, and that's how you get people back. Why am I having to think of this shit? They absolutely screwed up with Lord of the Rings. They didn't release that in time. They did it as an afterthought. There was an opportunity to release one movie each of the anniversaries, the 25th anniversary every year. And then made it absolute gold for people wanting to revisit it and for people that wanted the cinema experience for the first time. Here's another one, absolute classic of a movie. Just release it on the 30th anniversary. You would get bums and seats. I would bloody go and see it. But nah. No, don't care. But there you go. I'm gonna because this is gonna be like a 2 hour rant of me just getting off on one. And yeah, that would have been gold. You know, younger ones that didn't have the cinema experience get to go in and see it like the full thing, especially now with IMAX and 4D Ultra, and you know what I mean. The flipping release at IMAX, you absolutely keep the cinema doors open, and then mix it in, throw the new movies in as well. People get used to going back to the cinema again. Freaking so much. It's a shame, but they have to learn the lesson. That's what I'll say. They have to be taught the lesson. Don't open your wallet to people that hate you and think they're better than you when they've got less talent. That's why we have a meritocracy. You reward talent. You reward people that actually want to tell you stories and want to do the best to create the best thing possible. And that's why I always say support your independent creators. If they're trying, obviously if they're not, you're under no obligation to. But find people out there that are at least still trying to tell a good story and want you to have a good time. You have the power to do that. Nobody can twist your arm up your back and take the money out of your wallet. At the end of the day, you're under no obligation. Same as folks that tune in here have no obligation to watch, and I thank you for doing it. And that's why I try to give as best reviews as I can of these things and not just worry about clickbait. You know, at the end of the day, the power lies with you guys, you know, and it's the only way we'll get things to change. There you go. On that little note, that was borderline preachy, this one. I apologize for that, but this did bring up, I wasn't expecting it to bring up so many emotions because I was never into the whole, golf thing. I never was part of that get overly emotionally attached. I mean, there's things There's things that I've been attached to in the past and they've been ripped away from me, so I've just went back. But seeing a movie like this again, just after, and it's been a while, it's been about 10 years since I watched it. And the fact that I just see the state of film today and I see where we've gone and there's no reason for it. And it just reminds me, it just validates why I feel the way I feel about modern cinema. I want to see the budgets. I want to see, even out of tragedy, this was created as a legacy, a homage to Brandon Lee. So that, that's how you become immortal, is what you leave behind, isn't it? Well, there you go. Thanks everyone for tuning in. Thanks for joining the chat. And let me know what you think if you come into this after the fact. Did you hate this movie? Like, do you agree that this is an absolutely fantastic movie and worth a rematch, or is this just all nostalgia? Do you think the remake's going to be much better and I'm just talking nonsense? Let me know in the comments. And until next time, keep up with the channel, do the type of things, and remember to keep it creepy, keep it horrific.